Okay, so welcome. I am excited that you're all here today. Um, we're going to be talking about going beyond five names, growing awareness through connection, not obligation. And first, I know that there are several of you on this call that are familiar with me, but for those of you who might not be, my name's Angel, and I spent 30 years as a professional in the nonprofit sector, primarily in youth serving agencies, 26 of those in leadership positions, and most recently as the director of development. And I left my full-time work a couple of years ago because I wanted to help other small and mid-sized nonprofits grow their programs through better fundraising and team and board development. So our goal here today is to explore how board members and other volunteers can support fundraising without the pressure of providing a generic list of names. And before we jump into that, I want to talk just about like some expectations for our time together. One is you can feel free to be on camera or not. So I know that sometimes it's uncomfortable to sit and stare at your own face listening to something. That's fine. I don't mind if you're not on camera, and I welcome you to be on camera. Um, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can raise your real hand or your digital hand, and I will try to answer those questions. It's just me managing the behind the scenes, so if I don't notice you and you want to take yourself off of mute to interject, that's just fine. Pretty casual. Parking lot questions. So if you haven't heard this phrase before, parking lot are questions that come up that might be a little bit off topic, but are important to answer. And so if you can just throw those in the chat, I have some time reserved at the end for Q&A, and I'll try to get to some of those. I invite you to participate as little as much as you want to. If you're here to listen and learn, that's great. If you want to share your own experiences, that's great too. And then finally, the most important question I feel like I get asked when I do presentations is, will you send a recording and the slide deck? And yes, I will. I'll send notes and recordings and other materials to you afterwards. Great. So the type of fundraising that I do is what I call relationship-based fundraising. You probably have heard this term out there, which is really has the goal of getting off of what I often call the hamster wheel of events and campaigns. And we have this revenue gap, so we need to do something drastically quickly, and instead focuses on building long-term relationships with supporters in such a way that fundraising is really about connecting with those supporters. So a few assumptions we have about relationship-based fundraising is that it actually gets easier when you have committed supporters that you have relationships with. And it's a long game that requires a lot of patience. These relationships aren't developed overnight, and it's through a lot of careful consideration and seeing each person that supports your organization for the person that they are. And it all starts with connecting good people to good work, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Right? People who care about what you're doing and showing them the great work the impact you're having in your community. I wanted to note with this workshop here, I have created a little workbook. I put a link in the chat, I think. Let's see if it showed up. Hang on. There we go. A link to this. You don't need it to follow along. This is for you to use afterwards, but you can if you want to. I'll just be referencing throughout the workshop here. So let's dive in. So how many of you have either heard or said this phrase before? We'd like each board member to provide five names of individuals we can add to our mailing list. Yes, I admit I am guilty of saying it, and I've been on the receiving end. And what happens, and you can share or put in the chat, what usually happens after you make this blanket statement to your board of directors? Silence. Yeah. Yeah, you're just like, yep, me. Um, yeah, that's often. Um, and do you find that it produces like how many people, maybe two or three people, if you're lucky, might actually follow through with a few names? But you certainly, it's rare to have everybody. Yeah, might get a couple of names, but no introduction. So the idea is I'm going to pass these names along to you, and you're going to take it and run with it, right? Um, and so we're going to talk about how to move away from this. But before we do that, I want to point out one thing that I feel like is kind of fun about this. I was going through my slideshow and I was making sure that all the fonts were the same. And this was a one that was different. And I felt like it was important to keep it different because I want this to stand out as something we don't want. But also, the name of the font is Glacial Indifference. And I felt like that was a really appropriate name for this. So, anyway, so here we go. So, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this technique of saying, provide us five names, work? So, one, it feels very transactional, right? And a lot of board members or donors say that it feels like a quid pro quo relationship. I'm going to give my friends' names to you, and then they're going to give my name to their favorite organization, and we're all just spreading the same money around, right? It's totally skips over the relationship building. Like Debbie said, you get the name, but you don't get an introduction. You don't learn about them. You have nothing with which to reach out to start to build a relationship. It also assumes that all relationships are equal, that five names are going to get five asks and they're all going to give money to your organization. When some people might want to volunteer before they give. Some people might want to come take a tour before they give. Some people might be ready to give because they've heard all about you. Not all relationships aren't equal. It also puts pressure on board members without the tools to follow through. So I know when I'm asked as a board member, because I do sit on a few boards in my community, if I'm asked to give five names, I'm like, what kind of names? Like, who do you want? What are you looking for? I'm not sure. And I'm a fundraiser. So imagine the folks on your board that aren't fundraisers and don't get how to use these tools or how to build relationships. And then it confuses identification with cultivation. Just because someone can give you a name doesn't mean that they're ready to have a relationship with your organization. So we're going to kind of shift the paradigm a little bit from who can you give us to who might also love this work. Who do you know that might also love what we're doing? And that's where relationships can start. So I'm gonna back up just a little bit to a diagram I'm sure many of you have seen, but I feel like this frames this discussion very well, which is kind of our Venn diagram of our ideal supporter, right? So a lot of times we jump right to capacity, right? So I've heard this many times when we've said the phrase, "Can you give me five names?" And the person says, "I don't have wealthy friends," right? And it's like, well, it's not all about wealth, but that's oftentimes what we think of when we think about trying to bring more donors in. Do they have capacity? But for our purposes, we're also going to think about capacity as in their time, their resources, maybe financially, but maybe also knowledge that they have and connections that they have. So then we have to think about, so maybe they have capacity, but do they have propensity? Are they someone who's likely to be philanthropic? How many times as an organization have we chased somebody in our community that we know has a fair bit of wealth, but come to find out they're not somebody who tends to give it to nonprofit organizations or who donates it. So they have to want to uh, be giving back to the community. And then the thing that we skip over most often, but I think is most important, is their affinity. Do they have a connection to your organization? Hmm. Now, it's really easy when we think about affinity. we can think about an obvious connection. They're a board member. They're a recipient of your work. They are close to you, like a neighbor in the community. But then also thinking about affinity as the human that's involved. Their lived experience. What do they have? Why are they connected to your organization? And I'm going to dive into that a little bit more soon. So instead of thinking of fundraising as a transaction, I make an ask of somebody and they follow through with a gift to my organization. It's really a journey that starts with awareness, understanding what you're doing, that leads to often curiosity. I want to learn more. That might include an experience, attending an event, or volunteering, taking a tour, seeing a program in action, a feeling of belonging. This organization connects to who I am as a person. Okay, that's really important as we're thinking about um, developing relationships. And then finally, investment. Somebody might come straight to the investment. They might be ready to make a donation right away, but oftentimes they're not going to continue to make donations without those other steps. Maybe you've seen this kind of diagram before, this marketing funnel that can be used for fundraising as well. So again, we start with awareness, then building interest, involvement, investment, and then hopefully reoccurring or repeat loyal donor and or ambassador for your organization. So in the workbook, I created kind of a worksheet that you can work on to, I encourage you to think about what are the opportunities individuals might have at each stage to understand your organization. So for example, when you think about awareness, how do people first hear about your organization? Is it social media? Is it out and about in the community? Is it in a billboard or what have you? Like, what's the first kind of opportunity somebody has to connect with your organization? And then, how do you know that people are showing interest in your organization? What are some of the signs that they show you? Is it that they're responding, they're commenting on your social media posts? Is it that they're um, uh, clicking and opening your emails? And so on and so forth. And this is going to come back. We're going to come back to this later when we talk about the tools that our board members need to be those ambassadors. So if we're looking at this funnel, our board members should fit in, hopefully, in this bottom area where they are both a loyal donor or supporter and an ambassador for your organization. It's important to remember that the funnel shape is very intentional. You constantly need people coming in at the top of your funnel because you're naturally going to have attrition in your supporter base. Most retention rates hover around 50% or so for donors, which means that every year you've got to have new donors coming in. So you've got new people in the cycle, and your board members should be in that position to help you fill that top of the tunnel or funnel and start bringing them through those different stages so that you can bring them to that place where you have a relationship with them and they become a supporter of the organization. So what do I mean by ambassador? So our ambassadors, hopefully, are showing they have a strong affinity towards your mission. They have some kind of connection with your organization um, that is personal to them. They're able to articulate why they are passionate about the organization. They know their story. And this is where I feel like people get a little nervous, is they're excited to share their experience with others. This doesn't always happen. Sometimes we've got the first two. We know that they're really connected. We know that they're really involved, but we don't get the sense that they're out shouting our names from the rooftops, right? Which is the ideal situation. I want to share a little story of my own personal experience to give you kind of an idea of what this might look like. So like I mentioned, I sit on a few boards within the community, And one of them is an organization some of you might have heard of called the Encore Dance Troupe. And if you haven't heard of Encore Dance Troupe, they're an organization that has been around for 40 years this year, dedicated to preserving the art of Cambodian dance. It was started by refugees who wanted to make sure that the art form of Cambodian dance was not lost, whereas 90% of the artists in Cambodia or the arts, sorry, were wiped out by the Khmer Rouge. And so I don't necessarily have a connection to the Cambodian community. I grew up in Ohio. And my connection is from being here in Lowell, where we have the second largest Cambodian American population in the country. But I did grow up dancing, and I do understand the power of dance as an art form and what it means to the dancer, right? And so that's why I joined the board. Now, if I have the opportunity to talk about the Angkor Dance Troupe, if it comes up in conversation, which it does a lot, then the first thing I do is I pull out my phone and I say, "You've got to see these photos." Whoops, what, I went the wrong way. I'm so excited. And look at this. Look at these photos. Look at this imagery. And I'm like, and here's when they're going to be performing next. And here's how you can get involved. Exactly. Everyone needs to go see Swan Lake. I've been telling everybody about this. Oh, this is amazing. They're doing this premiere performance of Swan Lake, right? So as a board member, I have the opportunity to get people excited about, these are the tools I have at my disposal, these wonderful images. You know, I linked their website to this logo here so that you can go learn more about the Encore Dance Troupe, right? And that I know what's going on. We have Kamai Swan Lake coming up that you can go to that. We'll be at the Folk Festival. We'll be at the Southeast Asian Festival, right? That's what an ambassador looks like, right? I certainly support them with my time as an expertise as a board member. I certainly support them financially, but hopefully what I can do is bring more people to understand about the amazing work that's happening here and what a special organization this is. Right. So ideally, ideally your board members hmm, feel that strong connection to your mission and work. I know that a lot of times folks join our boards because either a friend recommended them. We needed more board members, and so we had a friend that said, "Here's someone who'd really love to be on your board," or maybe their company encourages board involvement, so they joined a board in order to fulfill that, right? Hopefully, somewhere within that, they feel a connection. They feel a personal connection to your mission and work. They take pride in your organization and want to share the good work that you're doing with others. And they understand how they move someone from awareness to interest. So, kind of coming back to that idea of the names don't do us any good if we don't know how interested they are in our organization and they don't know how they can learn more, right? So, this last one is somewhere where I feel like again, there's a little bit of a gap sometimes. Oh, I met somebody, they were really excited. Here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass your name along to Angel. She'll get in touch with you, right? Because they don't know what else to do. They know to connect this person with the staff. But we want them to know what are ways people can get involved. So I want you to just take a moment and reflect. Think about your most engaged board member. And do you know why they are committed to your organization? Do you know what originally got them involved with the organization? What they're most passionate about? Which of your programs they get really excited about? And when you have a picture of that person in mind, I want you to imagine them like at a party or a gathering or even at the conference table at work. Do you think that they're talking about your organization to other people? Do you think that they're saying, thanks, Deb. Uh, do you think that they're talking about the org? And if someone shows interest, like if the person they're talking to, does that board member know what to do next? What's the invitation to come closer to your organization? So here's some steps that you can whoop, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. So here's what the board members need to get to that place to be an ambassador. One is an understanding of why being the ambassador matters. Why does it matter that they're helping to spread awareness to to the community? Why does it matter that they're willing to shout your name from the rooftops? Two, they need a story they can tell. Again, hopefully a personal story about an interaction they've had with your organization, or a moment where they saw a program in action. They need something concrete they can invite people to. So again, we want to get them away from this, like I met Jasenia the other day. She seemed really excited about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send an email to our development director with her name and say, reach out to Jasenia. She's excited. Well, you're jumping the relationship, right? You're trying to force a relationship that doesn't exist yet. So what's the concrete thing that that board member can invite people to get more involved? Is it come take a tour? Is it come volunteer? Come build bouquets of flowers? What is the thing that you want them to? And there's going to hopefully be a number of those things. And then it's really, I think, important that we're framing this as permission to widen the circle without pressure, meaning that they're understanding that you're not just going to call their friend up and ask them for a donation, that you're not expecting them to do that, that really what we're doing is we're just helping share great work with people who probably care about it. You're not asking them to make the ask, you're asking them to open the door. And an important note here is that that doesn't mean you're never going to ask board members to make asks. It's just that we're framing it so that those folks who are new to it and are not comfortable fundraising have a way to start making those introductions, that you are going to have board members who never want to make asks, and they need some way to bring more supporters into the organization, right? And so this kind of makes it's not all or nothing. There's a way to bring people closer that you don't have to make an ask, maybe not yet. So here's a few, we're going to get into kind of the how might we do this. So the first thing I would recommend is that at some point, whether individually with your board members or as a group, that you're checking on alignment, connecting them with their why. I don't know if everybody here, maybe you're familiar with Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. I use this tool a lot. And if you aren't, I highly recommend checking it out. And in this, he talks about how companies, he's really more focused on companies, can really articulate easily what it is they do, right? And if you think about your organization, it's probably easy to articulate what you do. You can even articulate very easily how you do it. And maybe your board members, volunteers can do that too. They can say, we distribute food in the community. We distribute bags of food to senior citizens, right? That is what we do. But he suggests that the why is really the heart of what you want to be able to articulate. Why do we do this, right? It can be what problem are we solving, but I think when we talk about our personal connections, our why is the reason that connects us to the organization. I think about another organization in the community that I feel a strong connection with, which is Mill City Grows. And those of you who know Mill City Grows, they have community gardens all over the community. And I like the organization for many reasons. I get what they do. I get how they do it. I like it. My why is that I used to be a member of a community garden in a community when I was I didn't know anybody, and that was my community. And so I feel a strong connection to community gardens, right? And I hope you're seeing what like our board members are people too with lived experiences and with their own passions and interests. And so hopefully there's something in there that lines with your organization that's really important to keep that motivation going. So we're going to connect them with their why. And we're going to provide the tools they need as they need it. So if somebody's struggling to come up with their why, maybe we're asking them, what do you need to understand our organization better? Do you want to come see a program? I remember one time a board member who was really, really a great board member happened to have some time off of work and said, can I come just help out in your office? And at the end of their time at the office, they said, I have never seen a group of people move and work so diligently and so passionately. And their perspective on the whole organization changed from that time. That's what this person needed to understand this organization better. So if they're struggling with their why, maybe it is that they need to, it's time for another tour, or it is time to volunteer in a program or meet somebody that's a beneficiary, something like that. What do they need to understand the organization better? And then you can help them help you. And that's that last step of educating people on how to bring their interested friends closer, not just pass their name along to you, but to say, we could have coffee together. If that's something you and your friend do, maybe you could invite us to have coffee all together. Or maybe we can just have a meeting together, right? So, what are the ways? And that's going to be different for every organization. Not every organization has a facility that can be toured. Not every organization has puts their clients front, donor facing, right? So it's going to be different for your org. And that's why that whole funnel exercise is helpful to get to that interested to involved stage to know what are those things that you can offer your board members that will help them bring their interested friends closer. Oh, so now we're almost ready to replace that request for 5 names. We're almost there. But I want to remind you of something that's really important, which is that, again, when we talked about in the beginning, this blanket, we stand in front of the board and we say, I need everybody to give 5 names, or we send an email out. We need you to give 5 names, right? Um, the reason oftentimes we get silence is because if you heard the phrase, when it's everybody's problem, it's nobody's problem, right? It's so easy when there's a blanket ask to be like, she's not talking to me, clearly, right? Talking to that other person that has all those wealthy friends, right? That's the thing. So what we want to try to do is get really specific with the ask. And the more specific you are, the more likely you are to get a response. And I'm going to use the phrase one ask, one person. We're not making these blanket asks anymore. We're not saying we want everybody on the board to bring somebody for a tour because that's not everybody's jam, right? There's going to be some people who, for whatever reason, can't do that, but maybe they can do something else. So it might look like, from this blanket ask, share 5 names, staff will take it from there, to would you invite this person to take a tour of the program with us? Or could you set up a time for us to have coffee together? Would you be willing to host a small gathering? So I know there's people that I've worked with before that love to throw parties. Those are people that are going to throw you a house party. Whereas there's other people who love to sit and chat over coffee, or something after work, or have dinner or lunch or what have you, right? So where the ask is not only tailored to the board member, but maybe also the person that you're doing the asking of. So an example, and we're going to do a little exercise here. So I'm going to give you a few moments to think about that. Again, pick a board member. Maybe again, you're thinking about whoever is most engaged on your board. Think about that area of affinity they have for your organization. Is there a program they're really passionate about? Is there something that they love doing with the organization? And think of a specific invitation you could make of them. And if anybody's willing to share, you can type it in the chat. So it might be something like this. Again, one ask, one person. We're asking the board member to do something that we think will light up that area of affinity that they have. And we're also asking them a specific ask about the person that they're connecting us with, right? So this is an example. Helen, you've talked about how much you value workforce development. Would you invite your colleague, and maybe we know the name of that colleague, or it could be a colleague at this particular corporation, and in back of our head, we know we've been trying to get connected to XYZ Corporation to speak at our upcoming Career Expo. right? So we're asking the person to do something that they're really excited about, workforce development, and we're asking them to connect somebody that might be able to have we build a relationship with that's going to be beneficial. I'll give you a moment to think about it again, and then if anybody wants to share what their ask might look like, I think it would be interesting to see somebody else besides me. Could anyone think of an ask they might, a very specific ask? Stephanie, as a Proud alumni, we'd love to show more folks how incredible the students of Lowell are. Would you invite someone from your team to be a career speaker? Perfect. Yes, exactly. So you're tapping into this person's um, connection as a student and giving them a really, really specific thing that they can do, right? And I love I I really, really appreciate the idea of getting so specific because as again, me, when I've been a board member, when somebody says, Angel, will you do this thing that's in my area of expertise, which is fundraising? And they say, will you look at this? I'm like, I'm all in. Yeah, I'll show up at the board meetings. Yeah, I'll make a vote. Yeah, I'll do all the things I'm supposed to do. But I'm going to light up when you ask me to do something that is very specific to my skill set. Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, great. So I have put in the workbook that I have kind of an example of what I would call a little bit of an inventory. Maybe just you could a nod, a show of hands. How many of you know that you have a some type of board matrix for your organization?
What do you mean by board matrix?
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to explain. So a board matrix might be, in its ideal form, it would be you would have a list of skills that maybe you would hope board members would have that would fill in some gaps for the organization. So a lot of small organizations, for example, look for a board member that's an HR professional because they can't hire an HR professional. A lot of them might have want a lawyer on their board. If you were a land trust, you might want a real estate lawyer on your board or something like that, right? To fill the gaps. So the board matrix might be here's all the people on our board and here's their passions and interests, right? And that way you can A, make sure that you're filling those gaps, but also you really understand what you can tap into each person's area of expertise. So this is kind of similar to that or may add to that, which is adding not just their skill set, but also what is their affinity. And then what is a specific request you might make of them? And the specific request might change over time, but could be a starting place. Like it might be the what might be easiest for them, or might be something that could be again a gap you have, like somebody in the community you want to meet. So my example here is our board member who is really excited about our outreach program and happens to be connected in politics in the city. And the specific request might be, we really need an introduction to the city planner because we're doing some development work, right? So this is an exercise I recommend that maybe you consider with your putting all your board members' names there. And then it could be a good test of, do I know what really connects them to this organization? And then what's something that I could put on their radar that they can be doing? Like, hey, we're looking for somebody that can connect us to, again, a specific company in the community or what have you, right? And that is, again, it's really an exercise to help you get away from the blanket ask and into the one-on-one ask. And something that I found super helpful in doing this kind of activity as well is when I was going to community events and I happened to run into a certain person, I already knew what I wanted to talk to them about, and what, like, how they could get more involved in the organization. So that's one. Next is as we're doing that in the workbook again, if you're at the why stage, so if you do all those affinity, you're looking for your board's affinity and you're like, I have no idea. I have put together just some sample questions that could take your board members from why are you involved in this organization to what can you tell other people about our organization? What's your story? And that's just a reflection for them to what do you do next? So again, that education piece, connecting to the why. Yeah, Michelle.
So I am going to be interviewing along with three board members next week, a new potential board member. Would this be something we could use prior to asking them?
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you want to get involved? Why? Because I think
Yeah,
sometimes you don't ask those questions up front. You just hear, oh, another body to help. But I really like how you're phrasing this. So would it be worth using this prior to getting a board member on?
absolutely. So, yes, so I would love to see it become part of people's practice when they're recruiting board members and when they're bringing them on. And I know, again, I've reflected on my experience when I've been asked to join boards. I ask, why do you want me on the board? And they often have said, we would want to tap into your fundraising expertise. I'm like, absolutely, happy to do it. And then I say I need to think about it. And I have done that reflection on, am I really drawn to what the work that they're doing because I want to be passionate about it. I don't want to just show up for the meetings, right? So, yeah, so I would say maybe try doing both hand in hand is reflect upon your current board members and then think about how would this look in your onboarding process for new board members or recruitment process for sure. And I think that reflection will be helpful for them too, because like you said, uh, uh, it's important for them to know why they're joining the board as well, so that they don't just become more kind of like another person to manage without contributing, right? So this could be this, and I very intentionally did not make this like print and play because it really needs to be modified. These are just sample questions and kind of a framework. It's probably more than you would want to ask. Uh, but you're going to want to modify it. So you're going to want to do the funnel exercise first, and then maybe look at this. And then I also included some facilitation tips. So maybe you decide to do this as an exercise at your board meeting. Maybe you decide to do a small group discussion. Maybe you decide to do one-on-one conversations. Again, it's a long game. You give yourself time for this. So I think we're just going to, yeah. So I'm just going to kind of recap kind of that whole process. I know I've thrown a lot at you. So one is look at that funnel brainstorm to consider what are the opportunities to build awareness, spot interest, get somebody involved, to move them through the funnel. And it's really helpful to be really specific and articulate that. And then use that inventory to see what you already know about your board affinity, skill sets, and match them up with specific tasks that align with individuals. And maybe even thinking about if you have a list of people in the community that you want to connect to, and you're thinking about who on my board might be able to make that connection, putting that in that list as well. If that inventory is a little light, then maybe consider the survey or conversation, helping them discover their why, bring people closer, um, and helping them educate them as to how they can help cultivate relationships. And I think that your board members will appreciate this. I think they will appreciate getting away from this idea that we want you to hand over names of our friends to we have this really specific way we can work together to bring more people to the organization. And then last, same thing that I just said, be sure to set reasonable expectations to how fast. It's a long game. This doesn't all happen overnight. You're not going to get meetings with every single person right away, but it's worth the effort in the end. What happens is then you will find that you're connecting more, it's easier to ask people for money when you have a relationship with them and you know what they're passionate about, right? So, whew, uh, so the link I put in the chat, I'll send it out tomorrow as well, or yes, probably tomorrow. Probably not. What questions do you all have for me? Or statements or things you want to add to what we've talked about here?
I don't have a question, but more of just a comment. I appreciate the examples that you gave of the direct ask